Hey kids, welcome back to AMC's Garage. Today we're going to be fitting this Healtech GIpro X-Type G2 gear indicator along with its X-Type wiring loom to this Yamaha FZ1-N. So this is the GIpro X-Type G2, the newest gear indicator from Healtech. And lately they've changed the way that these things are installed, because now you get a bike-specific wiring loom which you can then connect up to universal gear indicators, meaning that you can take this gear indicator from bike to bike and you only ever have to change the wiring loom. So the first order of the day is to get the wiring loom connected up to the bike. In here we have the wiring loom itself, 4 cable ties and 2 Scotch lock style wire tap connectors. They are actually 3M branded. Very nice. Now if you've seen my other gear indicator install video on the Versus 650, you'll notice that there's a few more connectors and a few more wires on this one. These two we will use to connect to the speed sensor. One of these extra ones we need to find a switched positive to give power to the unit, and the other one we need to connect up to the crankshaft position sensor. And finally the last connector just plugs into the gear indicator itself to complete the system. So let's start by finding our speed sensor. Now I'm going to make the bold assumption that, like most of the electrical connections, it's under here somewhere. So we need to lift the tank up, which means first off, so that's that off. Now unbolt the tank, take off the rear and front seat, and then we can lift up the tank. Prepare our propping device, lift up the tank, sure not to put any stress on the fuel line, poke that in there, jam that there, lovely. And now if I come round to this side, can't see anything. And looking through underneath here I can see that that white 3-pole connector there is the one that we're after. We need to split that, plug our wiring harness into it, and we do this by pushing down on the little tab at the top and then pulling the connector apart. There we go. So there's our 2 bits disconnected from each other. So now when we look at our Healtech wiring harness, you can see here we've got the matching plug and socket all very nicely heat shrinked onto the loom, and we simply plug the Healtech harness in between those 2 connections we've just separated. So there you have it, that's the harness now plugged into the speedo sensor. Now I think I'm going to run this cable off in that direction. I'm just working from this end because hopefully it's easier for you to see what's going on. This green and black one needs to go to the crankshaft position sensor, and to find the crankshaft position sensor we come round over to the right hand side, and this is actually it right here. So we follow this wire into the engine and we discover that it's actually this natural coloured 2-pole connector nestling neatly here with the vacuum pipes. So we need to tap into that, and I think that's going to be a lot easier if I can get to it a bit better, so I'm going to disconnect it by pushing the tab, pulling the connectors apart. And to make my life yet easier, I think I'm actually just going to pull the whole thing out so that I can fully see what I'm doing. So now we need to trim this outer sheath back far enough that we can get our connection onto one of these wires. Fold that back, and there's our wires exposed, ready for us to chop into them. Looking at the instructions here, grey is in bold type, so I'm going to go with the assumption that grey is the colour we need to chop into. Despite the cold, I think I'm going to need some dexterity for this step, so gloves are off. Take out our first little cable hijack connector, put the metal piece into its groove, but we don't want to push it in because we've got to get the wires in there yet. Just in case there's any of you who haven't ever used these things before, into the straight through channel we need to stick our grey cable from the crank position sensor. That goes all the way in there, just like that. Now of course it could be tempting at this point, because it's all nice and easy, just to plug in the cable from the Healtech wiring loom, but we're outside of the frame, so we need to poke that back into the engine first. We'll follow our cable routing as we had it before, and pull it back through. Marvellous. And then into the other hole on this hijack connector we poke the unstripped green and black cable from the Healtech wiring loom. And it's nice to see actually that there's some kind of silicone goop inside this hijack connector, just to further waterproof all of our connections. Right, so it turns out I'm actually going to have to cut back to this point because I've got it wrong here. When it came to the gear indicator learning the gears, it wasn't getting past the first stage. And the reason for that is, you see the wire that comes from the bike, this one, the one furthest from us, the grey wire is on the right, and that actually corresponds with the darker wire leading to the sensor. So it almost seems the wires actually swap over. The light grey wire is on the left here, leading to the sensor, and the grey wire is on the right, leading to the bike. So I've got this the wrong way around, and I just need to swap that wire onto this one. So important to make sure that you're going by the colouring from the loom leading into the bike rather than to the sensor, because they could well be different. So I'm just going to quickly pop this hijack sensor apart. There's a little screwdriver just to lever the connecting piece out and off of the wires. So now we can get that wire out and put the other darker wire in its place. And then squeeze the metal piece down, which causes it to cut through the casing of the wire, and now creates a contact between this wire from the Healtech wiring loom and the darker wire now leading to the sensor. Do that back up, just to avoid having any bare metal poking out anywhere. Stick a piece of insulation tape around these cuts that are in the wire here. So there we go, that is the black and green cable from the Healtech wiring loom going into essentially the grey cable leading into the loom from the crankshaft position sensor. I'll just have my nursing staff stitch the patient back up and we'll carry on. So now we can reconnect the sensor back up to the bike until that clicks. And now all that we're left with is the red wire, for which we need to find a switched positive feed. It suggests either using side lights, rear brake light, anything which is going to come on when the bike comes on. Now for the sake of ease and proximity, I'm going to go with what they suggest and use the rear brake light switch feed, which is this brown coloured 2-pole connector which is sitting right in front of us. What it does mean is I need to snip this cable tie here to free up the loom to get some access to it. So now that's free. You can pull the whole thing to the side, trim back this outer sheath, and we want to hijack into the brown wire here. Take out our second little hijack connector, slip the brown wire into the straight through part, put our red wire into the blind section, pinch down the metal piece to cut the casings of the wire and bridge the two of them together. Close the little plastic clip to hold it all in place. There we go. We can now reconnect the rear brake switch. I'm just going to bundle all of these wires up. Lovely, so now we can move on to the next phase of our operation. We need to get this connector up to the front end where I'm going to be connecting the gear indicator itself to somewhere in the dash area. So to start with, I'm just going to hook this cable down into the groove here, and then you can just about see the main wiring loom in there, so I'm going to jump on board with that. I thread this through there. Hopefully I should be able to pull that cable through. So I'm going to continue following this main loom through the various wiring channels and frames and things until, oh yep, here it comes. Oh, I can see the head. Congratulations, it's a baby cable. Now I'm going to go around the ignition barrel, around this clutch cable, and then roughly into the area that I want. So there we go, our GIpro X-Type wiring loom is now connected up to the bike with our connector at the front end, so we can get on, plug in the gear indicator and see if we've done everything right. Before we go any further, I'm just going to smash a cable tie around those two wires to keep them together. I now pronounce you cable and cable. So I'm going to take the bold and confident step of lowering the petrol tank. Just check under here. We've got no cables being pinched or trapped by the fuel tank. So now we can get to the exciting part of this job, connecting the business end. So in here we've got the destructions, 2 more cable ties, the gear indicator itself, and a spare sticky pad for in case we wanted to side mount, which in this case I'm actually going to do, as I've already decided that the spot that makes the most sense for me is on this mostly straight edge of the dash. It fits very nicely in there with the corner of my screen as well. Perfect. Using one of my handy tried and tested glasses cleaning cloths, I shall first degrease the right hand side of the gear indicator and then clean up this edge of the dash. So now that that's clean, first of all stick our sticky pad to the gear indicator, and that pad is trimmed to exactly the right size, which is nice. It's not the job to be doing with cold fingers, I can tell you. Peel that off, stick the gear indicator into place on the side of the dash there. Right, that is now on there. Yep, it's going nowhere. Making sure to leave access to the top here, because the exciting feature of this new second generation gear indicator is that the top is actually a touch panel for changing the settings. More about that later. So now we can actually take our connector from the wiring loom, our connector from the gear indicator, and plug them both in together. And then all we need to do is put this somewhere tidily out of the way. I'm going to poke it down this little hole here, and after I've tucked this cable underneath the dash to get it out of the way and out of sight, I'm going to use the last two cable ties out of the kit just to piggyback onto this loom here and make sure they're not going to be interfering with our steering. Yeah, that's good. So there we go. With that in place, I can take off the protective film, and now when I turn on the bike, hopefully something should happen here. Oh, look at that. And then the L flashes for learning, because it's now ready to learn the position of the gearing so it can then accurately show you what your bike's doing. So I'm going to put all this back together quickly, and then we'll get on with setting this thing up. Okay, to start the learning process, we first of all need to warm the bike up. So I've had the bike running till the fan came on, which just means that everything is at running temperature and the idle speed is going to be nice and steady. Turn the ignition on, counts down from 6 to 1, and then L starts flashing slowly. We start the bike. L flashes quickly to say that it's learning the idle speed. Once it's got that, changes to 1. This tells us we need to put first gear in. So I'll do that, and I'll hold on to the front brake pretty solidly because I'm on paddock stand at the moment, which means the back wheel is spinning freely round. So now it's on 1, we need to put the revs around about 3,000 to 4,000 RPM and hold them there. 1 flashes quickly saying that it's learning this speed, and then it switches up to 2. So now we need to do the same again, switch it into second gear, keep the revs between 3,000 and 4,000, 2 flashes quickly, N, and then it switches to 3. So then we switch it to third gear, same thing again. Fourth, fifth, last of all, sixth. So now as we come down the gears, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and then 1st, then neutral, and that's it. Gear indicator is now learned. What is this with the fan? You're such an attention whore. So that is the Healtech GIpro X-Type Generation 2 gear indicator fitted to my Yamaha FZ1-N. Watch out for the upcoming video when I'll show you in a little bit more depth the extra functions and features that this little box of tricks has tucked up its wizard's sleeve, including but not limited to touch control for all the various settings. How cool is that? Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time on AMC's Garage. Take care. Ta-ra.